Now, when Christians talk about a God of compassion and mercy, many atheists will point out those qualities are hard to understand when we see God ordering genocide by telling the Israelites in Deuteronomy 7 to totally destroy the Canaanites and 6 other nations and to show them no mercy. And that's not an isolated incident. God ordered the execution of every Egyptian firstborn. He flooded the world and killed untold thousands of people. He told the Israelites, now go and attack the Amalekites and totally destroy everything that belongs to them. Do not spare them, put them to death, the men and the women, the children and the infants, cattle, sheep, camels, and donkeys. That sounds more like a violent and brutal God than a loving one. How can people be expected to worship him if he orders innocent people to be slaughtered? Well, let me start by saying God's character is absolutely holy. He has to punish sin and rebellion. He is a righteous judge. That is undeniably part of who he is. If anyone wants to escape, he will allow them to. Let's break this down a little. For example, the Amalekites. History shows us they were definitely far from innocent. These dudes were not nice. In fact, utterly and totally deprived. Their mission was to destroy Israel. In other words, to commit genocide. As if that weren't evil enough. Think what was hanging in the balance. Just for a second here. The Israelites were the chosen people through God would bring salvation for the entire world through Jesus Christ. There's a lot hanging in the balance there. Many skeptics could say you're saying that they deserve to be destroyed. Now, my response to that would be the destruction of their nation was necessary by the gravity of their sin. Had some hardcore remnants survived, they might have reassumed their aggression against the Israelites and God's plan. These were persistent and vicious and warring people. To show you how reprehensible they were, they had been following the Israelites and cowardly slaughtered the most vulnerable of them, the weak, elderly, and disabled who lagged behind. They wanted to wipe every last one of the Israelites off the face of the earth. God could have dealt with them through a natural disaster like a flood, but instead, he used Israel as his instrument of judgment. He took action not only for the sake of the Israelites, but ultimately for the sake of everyone through history whose salvation could be provided by the Messiah, who was born among them. But what about the children, many would ask? Why would the innocent children need to be killed? Now let's keep in mind that technically nobody is truly innocent. The Bible says that in Psalm 51 that we're all born to sin. That is the rebellious nature, and we commit wrongdoing. Also, we need to keep in mind God's sovereignty over life. An atheist once brought up this issue to me. I answered in a way that one expert did. God created life, and he has the right to take it away. If you can create life, then you have the right to take it away. But if you can't create it, you don't have that right. People assume that what's wrong for us is wrong for God. It's wrong for me to take your life because I didn't make it, and I don't own it. For example, it's wrong for me to go out into your yard and pull your bushes, cut them down, kill them, transplant them, move them around. I can do that in my own yard because I own the bushes in my yard. God rules all of life. He created it, and he has the right to take it away, if he wishes. In fact, we tend to forget that God takes the life of every human being. It's called death. The only question is when and how, which we have to leave up to him. Now let's press a little deeper into the issue. Many could ask, what about the children? Well, socially and physically, the fate of the children throughout history has been with their parents, whether that's for good or for ill. And you need to understand that the situation among the Amalekites in that throughoutly evil and violent and depraved culture, there was no hope for those children. This nation was so polluted that it was like gangrene that was taking over a person's leg, and God had to amputate the leg or the gangrene would spread, and there wouldn't be anything left. In a sense, God's action was an act of mercy. Many could ask, mercy? How is that so? Well, according to the Bible, every child who dies before the age of accountability goes to heaven and spends eternity in the presence of God. Now, if they had to continue their lives in the horrible society past the age of accountability, they would have been corrupted and lost forever. People might bring up the fact that If ultimately it was best for those children to die before the age of accountability because they would go to heaven, why can't the same be said about the unborn children who are aborted today? So there's a difference there, because the Amalekites had a culture that was completely dark. Now, God does not command anyone to have any abortion. In fact, it's contrary to the teachings of the Bible. Remember, He's the only one who can decide to take a life, because He's the ultimate author of life. Second, today we don't have a culture that's thoroughly corrupt as the Amalekite society. In what culture there was no hope, today there's hope. But unfortunately, we may be heading in that direction of the Amalekite culture, and that's a real shame. Something that I hope to reverse. Thanks for sticking by. Hopefully I'll be able to cover more on this later.